20 people just lost their income on the exact same Tuesday. 19 of them absolutely panicking, but one guy didn't. Now, he wasn't richer than anyone else. He didn't have some massive inheritance, a secret trust fund, or, a crazy side hustle printing money while he slept.
But when the restaurant they worked at suddenly closed and everyone else realized they literally couldn't afford their lives anymore, this guy, Elias, he was strangely calm. And the reason why is honestly one of the most important financial lessons that almost nobody teaches.
Section 1. The Tuesday Panic. There's a very specific kind of silence that only really exists in a parking lot when 20 grown adults realize their math just no longer works out. No one was screaming, no one was crying. Instead, they were all just standing beside their cars, staring blankly at their phones. Just quietly, frantically calculating rent, credit card minimums, groceries, and agonizing over due dates they already knew they couldn't meet. The Ember Grill had just shut down indefinitely. No shifts, no paychecks, no timeline, just sheer panic. Well, except for Elias. He was standing in that exact same parking lot, hearing the exact same news, facing all the same uncertainty. But he looked different. Not happy, mind you, and not exactly relieved. Just steady, almost as if he had already prepared for this exact moment.
Section 2. The Upgrade Trap. Now, to really understand why Elias was so calm, we have to look at a trap that almost everyone falls into at some point. It's called the upgrade trap.
What is it? Well, it's that silent, unwritten rule that says every time you get a raise, you deserve a reward. It's the idea that every extra dollar you earn naturally deserves a slightly bigger, flashier life. Let's look at Elias and his coworker Julian. They actually started at the Ember Grill in the exact same month. They had the same position, worked the same hours, and brought home almost the exact same pay. So for a while, their lives looked virtually identical. But then, Julian got moved to the patio section. Better tips. He was making about 20% more on a good week. And that is when something super subtle happened. You see, that extra money didn't buy Julian security. It bought him permission. Permission to finally upgrade, to look successful, to stop feeling like the kid who grew up without enough. So he went out and signed for a car that still smelled brand new. He moved into a fancy apartment with a lobby, gym, and a view of a parking garage he joked was his skyline. And honestly, none of it felt irresponsible at the time. That's the truly dangerous part about lifestyle inflation, isn't it? It never feels reckless, it just feels earned. But little by little, the life that was supposed to feel freeing became incredibly expensive to just maintain. Now, Elias, he made a totally different decision. When his income went up, he looked at his life and just left it alone, completely on purpose. He kept renting his tiny room above a laundromat where the dryers literally hummed through the floor all night. He kept driving his 10-year-old fully paid-off Corolla. His grocery list? Barely changed. He was still hunting for those yellow clearance stickers. On paper, his life looked almost embarrassing compared to Julian's. Section 3. The Power of Not Today. But here's the thing. There was something nobody else could see in Elias's life. Breathing room.
Because he kept his expenses so low, a really good week at the restaurant could actually cover most of what he needed for an entire month. So every Monday, he'd take most of his extra cash and move it into a savings account at a bank totally across town. And get this, no app, no debit card, no easy online transfers. He set it up that way because he knew the person he was trying to protect himself from was himself.
And hey, it wasn't easy. One afternoon, he actually went and sat inside a used pickup truck on a lot. It smelled like leather and pure possibility. He imagined how incredibly proud he'd feel driving it around and how people would finally see him differently. But then, he thought about his old Corolla. Paid off, super reliable, quiet, asking absolutely nothing from him. So he stepped out of the truck, looked right at the salesman, and said 2 words that literally changed his future. Not today. Nobody applauded him, there was no dramatic movie score, nothing happened.
The months that followed were, quite frankly, painfully ordinary. Instant coffee, reading library books, staying home when all his friends went out. Just making those boring decisions again and again. But here is the wild part. Those boring decisions started compounding into something so much bigger. An envelope of cash became a savings account. That account became a substantial number. And eventually, that number transformed into something way more valuable than money itself. It became time. He had bought himself 6 months of time. 6 months where everything in life could go completely wrong and he wouldn't immediately drown.
Section 4. When the floor gives out. And then, the floor actually gave out.
It was a Tuesday when Marcus, the owner, stood up by the hostess stand with that heavy look on his face. The main water line had burst. The whole kitchen was flooded with severe electrical damage. The restaurant was going to be closed for at least 3 months. No shifts, no pay, no guarantees whatsoever. Suddenly, the future arrived all at once.
Out in the parking lot, Julian looked physically sick. I mean, he was already behind on his new car payments, his credit cards were maxed out, he had maybe $200 left to his name. He just kept asking the same panicked question, where did all the money go?
But deep down, he already knew the answer. It was sitting in those leather seats. It was in the expensive apartment, the upgrades, the life that felt so rich, right up until the exact moment it became a massive bill. That same night, Elias sat all alone at his kitchen table. He laid out his bills, doing it the exact same way his mother used to. When he was 19, he had watched her shuffle the same $40 between different piles of bills, just hoping the math would magically change if she stared at it long enough. For a split second, Elias felt that old, terrifying fear creep back in. His body literally remembered the panic. But then, he opened his notebook and did the math. Again and again. The result? He could survive for months. Not forever, sure, but long enough. For the very first time in his entire life, uncertainty didn't feel like he was drowning. It felt like standing in deep water and realizing, hey, his feet could still touch the bottom.
Section 5. The Envelopes Lesson. 6 weeks later, Julian called Elias. The bank had repossessed his car. His voice was literally breaking on the phone when he asked, "How are you not losing it right now?" Elias just looked at the simple envelope sitting on his counter. And then he told Julian the truth.
I never let my life catch up to my paycheck. That was it. No secret crypto investments, no winning lottery ticket, no hidden family wealth. Just years and years of refusing to spend tomorrow's safety just to impress today's version of himself. After that call, Elias actually helped Julian get a morning job at a local coffee shop. The pay was a lot lower, but the work was steady. And for the first time in a really long time, Julian finally stopped trying to look successful and started trying to actually become secure.
When the Ember Grill finally reopened in the fall, half of the old staff didn't even come back. Debt had basically chased them somewhere else. But Julian returned. He was different, quieter, and he was taking the bus.
One night after a shift, Elias watched Julian counting out his tips. Julian split the money into 2 distinct piles. One went straight into his wallet, but the smaller pile, that went into a plain white envelope. And across the front of it, written in bold black marker, was just one word: January. Neither of them said a single word. They really didn't need to.
Years later, Julian couldn't even remember exactly how much money Elias had actually saved up. But he never, ever forgot the sentence that saved him. Never let your life catch up to your paycheck.